Hello and welcome to a YouTube-only exclusive special of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am Tony Anderson and I am joined by our Aberdeen fan, Aberdeen's finest. And look at that room you're in, Tom. I mean, we're just talking about off air, but it's Mr. Thom Watt. How are you, Tom?
Good. Confused in a sense of a mixture of confusion, slight optimism, and a tinge of sadness. It's very strange being in a YouTube special. This is all going to be visual, isn't it? People are actually going to get so. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah,
exactly. You've picked the best room. It really puts mine to shame. People going to see, I don't know, jackets.
It's a lovely room. Some nicely hung jackets.
Jackets, and through a mirror, a woman with her arms crossed with a fishbowl as a head. So that's what I've got to offer. There's culture from my eyes.
Bit of culture all around. No, it's been a strange 24 hours to be an Aberdeen fan. It's been a very, very strange season all round. Never really know what we're gonna get. We've had some really, really good results and some really memorable nights and some absolutely atrocious performances, and not really, just never really knowing what's going to happen game to game. Ultimately, the draw against St Johnstone last night was Barry Robson.
Dundee.
Sorry, Dundee.
As people are probably aware, if I'm with Tom and it's the 31st of January 2024, we are here to do an emergency podcast based on the fact that Barry Robson has, from some people's eyes, finally been sacked as Aberdeen manager, and maybe that's where I'll start with you, Tom. Was the outside view was, I think people couldn't believe Robson was still manager. Was that up to the stage? Was that a view shared by Aberdeen fans?
To some extent, but I think people did buy into the idea that, if the reasoning for the iffy form was having to play Thursday, Sunday pretty much every week, okay, so let's see what that's like when that's no longer the case, and when the fixture list opens up a bit and it's not the top teams in the division with great regularity, and maybe we can put some, and we've got 3 games in hand, win those, and we're back up to 4th, 5th place, and we're back at. So I think there was a feeling that, okay, well, if that's the reasoning, then let's wait until there's a clear run. There's now a bit of a the back into 2024. We've not won any of the last 3 games. We haven't looked clever defensively. He's chopped and changed the tactics a bit. He's moved away from his preferred back 3. There's just not been any fluency. I mean, there's not really been there hasn't been the reaction or the a feeling that yes, the momentum was going to change. So I think while he got longer than it might have looked to an outsider, because the results haven't been great. The position in the league hasn't been good, and it's not a particularly vintage collections of teams this year. The feeling was wait and see. Now people have had the chance to wait and see. It's not got any better.
And would you say he earned that time based on sort of last season's borderline heroic run? I think that probably is a fair way to frame it. To third, I mean, Aberdeen were nowhere. We were talking about a team that had possibly the worst week on record as a top flight Scottish football team in terms of 11-0 in Edinburgh over a week and knocked out from Darvel. For a manager to come in and take it from there to sort of like one of the most important third place finishes that clubs can have just now, that is pretty heroic. And do you believe that earned him the extra time he probably got this time around?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not just. I mean, make no mistake that he was not the favourite for the job. There was no intention when Barry Robson took over of as a caretaker. There was no intention of him getting the job. They spoke to other people. There were plenty of other candidates. Don't know how far down the road they got with anybody, but he basically made it impossible for the board to give anybody the job other than him. They would have to be going, well, thanks for 7 wins in a row and turning it around to deliver what we hoped the season would bring based on the slowest start possible. But we'd like to rip it up and start again. He had to get the job. That bought him an awful lot of goodwill. I think some of the performances this season in odd matches kept the momentum. I mean, the away win at Ibrox, Aberdeen were really, really good in that, and some of the performances in Europe, unlucky not to. I mean, probably overstating it to say that they deserved to progress or anything like that, but were unlucky not to beat PAOK. Were at home. Were unlucky not to get at least to win one of the games against Helsinki, and then an additional 5 points, and you're in there. So it wasn't a million miles off.
I would disagree. Tom, you're trying to downplay it. I understand. I do this sometimes as well. But as an outsider looking in, I think Aberdeen were really unlucky not to get out of that group. But don't get me wrong, the PAOK one at Pittodrie, it's like Aberdeen deserve more, but they still shit the bed. It's what you look at it from both sides, like they collapsed.
And it was a tactical error by the.
He made the substitutions, didn't he?
He made the substitutions, and immediately, PAOK conceded from that. But I think those big games had convinced people that it just needs time. It will click. There's enough good players. Actually, it was that feeling latterly that's kind of convinced the board and me. Like I do feel sad. Like when Goodwin left, I couldn't be more happy that we'd got rid of him. When Stephen Glass left, it was like he should never have been given that job. It's ridiculous. I really wanted Barry Robson to be good. I really wanted it to work. I really wanted it to click for him because he felt
he's a don. He's a don as well.
He's a don.
I mean, that part of it,
exactly. But latterly, the fact that it'll click because he's got good players became he's got good players. Why is this not working?
Yeah,
and I think that's ultimately been it. Because I still maintain we've got a much, much, much better squad than we've had in years, and even it's a bit it's unbalanced, and there's some injuries, but like there are enough individual talents in that team that would. There's a couple of players in that would get into any team in the league. There's a couple more players in that would get into almost any team in the league. There's internationals. There's about 8, 9 full internationals in that squad. There is enough there that should be able to dig their manager out. That he couldn't with what he's got available was ultimately what turned it, I think.
So, just to talk about the transfer dealings in the summer, I'm a bit of a novice on Aberdeen. Does Robson get a lot of say in the transfers? Is that how it works?
It's a more of a modern way. The scouting system.
Yeah, he's involved, but he gets the final say. Yeah.
I would assume he gets final say on it, but it's definitely there is a committee, and there's a bunch of reasons why players are brought in. Obviously, if they're going to be a good fit and everything, but sell on value and actually that side of the club, the sort of off-field side, and Cormac said it in his statement, that side of the club is actually doing really well. I mean, the selling on players for good money, getting sell-on fees from as part of that, that's all doing pretty well. I mean, turnover's got it is way up even before the European run this year. That side of it's been really, really good. So I don't think there's a huge amount of questions that the club's largely been getting the transfer ethos right. And even if every deal has not been, amazing, there's probably been more right than wrong. and the ones that have gone right have been really, really good,
Right. Yeah.
like really, really spectacular. I think where the transfer dealings probably let him down this. There's two things I think that probably let him down last summer. One, I think, was I don't think anybody realised how important Yilmaz Ramadani was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he was kind of quietly effective. The fact that he's gone to Serie A and has been a standout for Lecce, and they're now, Inter Milan linked and all sorts. I think people are now going, wait a minute, that guy was probably a wee bit better than we gave him credit for.
And we only sold him for like $1 million. It wasn't like a huge amount of money. And I think there was an idea that Aberdeen were maybe pulling a fast one almost in that one, the vibe.
There was a bit of a feeling that he wasn't particularly young or anything, and he'd been all right, but fine. But actually,
but you see the difference in Clarkson without him being there. That then you start thinking what the effect he's having on everyone else. It's not just about him.
It's those kind of players who are unselfishly win the ball back, find a teammate, unselfishly keep the ball retain possession, keep it being recycled, protect their defence, are really, really hard to come by. I mean, there aren't. I mean, Scotland have got arguably one, maybe two of those in the squad. So I think it was a huge miss, him leaving and not replacing him directly. So it went from there being this very kind of one of the players being very, very disciplined defensively, one of the midfielders, to Graham Shinney, Clarkson and McGrath, really, who are not those things.
Yeah, because I remember talking, I think, to you, and I remember doing the midfield pod with Rob last year, the top 12s, and I remember we were like worried because the balance of Aberdeen's midfield seemed perfect, and the idea that, and at that time, there was a lot of chat about Clarkson coming back. Like Ramadani, Shinney, and Clarkson really works, and Ramadani means that Clarkson plays further forward, and it just all seemed such a good balance. And yeah, like you see, maybe people don't realise that he was probably the least heralded out of the three, because Shinney's like a legend of the club, and then obviously Clarkson was looked such a cut above in the league, and you really don't. Something that worried me, Tom, and something that I found weird is we may be going into a bit of depth here about, like, obviously Robson was thought of as a defensive manager. I don't think that's unfair. I think there was always the idea that Aberdeen preferred not having the ball, and certainly the results and the teams that you get the results against really speaks to that, and it was the other side that was a problem. But what I've found weird is that he signed 3 central defenders in the summer, and I'd say none of them have been a full success. And I found that a bit bizarre, because he got such a tune out of it last year when it didn't look like that was going to be possible. And then when money was spent and bigger name players were brought in, and international players that have been playing that back three, he's never really been able to get that right. But does that lead back to Ramadani again, would you say? Or do you think that the defensive recruits just haven't been as good as you would expect?
I think I think the other side of the transfer business that was an issue was recruitment was done very clearly with one system in mind. Mm-hmm. It was very clearly done. So we play this. This has worked for us. This 3-5-2, and the reason the 3-5-2 worked for Robson when he came in last year was he had 3 defenders who were good defenders. I mean, Matty Pollock was an exceptional defender at the level. McDonald was like really solid and a good organizer, and suddenly Liam Scales looked like a Celtic player when Robson came in. So 3 players that were really, really capable defensively. So when teams did attack, we could defend that, and then we had quick, technically gifted forward players that could get the ball forward and pace going forward, so that when teams did come on, we could hit them on the break. The issue this season is the defence hasn't been that good, and it's the same tactic. So invite teams onto you, and we are not as good defensively, but a system like the transfer business designed to play this system where we don't have the same the same counter-attacking abilities. I think James McGarry was obviously brought in as the idea being him to be left wing back. He's been pretty much perpetually injured. Johnny Hayes was the plan B. He's just like he's never been. He's not the Johnny Hayes of 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago. So it's been Jack McKenzie playing left wing back and Devlin at right wing back, and Devlin gets up and down and has actually been probably the best signing that we made last summer. But the idea that the only width and the only kind of attacking width that we've got are from nominally more defensive players was an issue. So I think when that system didn't work, when Duke's form dipped, when he was missing chances, there wasn't an ability to change to a plan B or a system that might have suited who was in form, because the recruitment had been very much about get 3 guys that can play this particular way in a back 3, and when that didn't work, it hasn't worked out.
How much has Duke let Robson down, would you say? How important do you think his drop in form this season? Do you think how big an impact do you think that's had on Barry Robson's ability to manage?
A bit by it. I think it has a bit, but I also think it's slightly been overstated. And I actually think one of the reasons Robson was fired was just not putting more faith in Duke. Like he could have he is the most gifted technical player that we've had since Ian Jess. Like just pace, power, work rate, can head, can finish, does the unpredictable, and obviously he's going to miss chances. Obviously, if he didn't miss chances, like we would not be into a second season of him. He's still a bit raw. So, but I think the problem with it, he's the X factor, and if he's that good, Majowski's actually a really disciplined player and can will play a system really, really well. Duke, you just need to let Duke things. So what we needed to do was, or what Robson needed to do was find a way of making the team solid enough and disciplined enough so that you can get the best out of those players that you just aren't going to turn up anywhere, that are just not going to be able to find. So I think part of it is in games that like Duke looked comfortably at the same level as anyone we played in the Europa League, but just won't. He goes in, he drops in and out of games at league level. Fine, you're just going to have to accept that that's what it is. Play him more.
It's because the way you're talking, you're saying that you're only getting width from quite limited players in the wing back row, and all I'm thinking is you've got a guy who could just be floating between the two sides, who's got the pace, and who can support whatever way that you want to on each side. You see, almost feels like the perfect antidote to the issue that you're doing. But that obviously are part of your opinion of where Robson went wrong. So I'm going to finish on sort of three last things that I want to ask you quickly. Robson's best resulting period. What was the happiest period with Robson, if you like?
I mean, the weirdly beating St Mirren to guarantee third, when it's good when you're good and you finish above rivals, and you kind of lord it over them a bit. See when you're bad and you've had to soak up and you're an absolute joke, and suddenly you can see slightly smug Hearts fans in particular going.
Well, I mean, we live in a world of them, Tom. We live in a world very close to them.
Yeah, maybe I should have just kept myself quiet for a little bit, and they can see that the sort of slight feeling of panic, and then overtaking them, and clawing back a huge. I actually have really fond memories of that, regardless of how it ended. That was a phenomenal end to the season.
It's out of nowhere. And you'll probably never do it again. You'll never get that scenario again, where you come back from so far and do it. And then obviously for us, it's fun because obviously the team that's collapsing is Hearts, which is always fun if you're a member of this parish. And what was when? Sorry, when did you go from it's over? When did you decide yourself? What was the game or the moment where you started to think, right? I think this is actually going wrong now. It's too far gone.
I think the losing 3-0 to St Mirren at home at Christmas, that was because it had been a long run of games and all of that, but we'd had a couple of games being postponed. Right, St Mirren were a horrendous run. I think they hadn't won in 7 or something. Were not playing well at all, and there was just no fight. There was no fight. There was no plan. There was no plan B when plan A didn't work. There was no inspiration, and nobody was willing to take that game by the scruff of the neck. And I think, for me, like I really wanted Robson to work, but I've long had this idea. It's not rocket science. You don't fire a manager when you've had bad results. You fire a manager when you don't think they can fix it. You don't think they can make it any better. And that was the point where I thought, he's not going to be able to fix this. Like he's not going to be able to fix this. In a one-off game, everybody has bad results, but that was not a performance or a level of effort that is from a group that knows what they're doing. I think morale's good. I mean, it seems like morale's good, and the players are getting on fine and all of that. And I don't think there was an issue with him personally, but it just couldn't make it work.
What would really annoy me as an Aberdeen fan is that even like going back to Duke, not using them in Europe at times, I really got that and understood it. And Robson had a real ability to play against the old firm and play in Europe in these big games. You're thinking, wow, right, that's really, really good thing to have, and because you can play these ways in big games. And then you've still got guys like Duke who could keep fresh and he could unleash them against the shit in the Scottish Cup fight. And he had that system with a bit of flexibility and being willing to take it off the handbrake. He was doing the hard bit. If you know, he was able to do the hard bit, and then with a little bit of flexibility and using it, and being willing to use Duke like that would have been like could have almost been a masterstroke, because people are like, well, why are you not playing your best player? But he could have made it work, and then he could have had him fresh for games, and he could have maybe been able to balance it. I could see that Robson, as I said, he was doing the hard bit, winning against the old firm, being hard to beat maybe when he's playing against Hibs or Hearts or whatever in those games, and then being able to go into Europe and really going to Germany and stuff, like really like totally in the game for the whole time. And you're like, wow, that's good. So that really frustrates me, because you're like, it'd be tough to get that going. Like that bit's the really, really hard bit. And I thought the last thing I'll ask, and before I let you go, Tom, is anything you feel he's unlucky? Was any extenuating circumstance on the outside that people like myself might not know that have maybe worked against Robson and got him to this period?
I mean, there have been some iffy decisions in the last couple of games that could have gone either way. Like Miovski's goal stands against Hearts. We beat Hearts, then he probably gets a stay of execution. There was a really tight VAR call last night, where Esther Sockler goal against Dundee, if that goes 2-0, then but I don't think there was. I don't know one result like it. This isn't the first. It wasn't like the first time they built pressure. That wasn't the first time that we'd got to the stage where this is a must-win game. I think this was like the 4th or 5th where it was.
Because Cormac seems pretty reasonable for that stuff. He seems pretty reasonable. He doesn't pull the trigger, as you saw with Goodwin.
And I think there was a real willingness this time to be like, we need to make this work. We want to make this work. Everyone wants to make this work. We don't want to be, looking for our. We've done 4 managers in 3 years. We don't want to be doing that again. And
we're all at it, Tom.
That's what we're doing. We're going again.
And I suppose, like, shoot prediction. Firstly, I'm sorry for keeping again, Tom, but I thought I'd ask, what would you want from a new manager? What are the things that you would most want, and what's your shoot prediction for who the new manager is going to be?
I think, what would I want? I would like a manager. I think the issue we've had, I was not against Derek McInnes leaving. I think that when way back, whenever that was, 4 years ago.
Sometimes it's done. It's not about right or wrong. It's just something run their course.
it had run its course, and I think it's really easy to look at what he's done with Kilmarnock, and he's done a phenomenal job, and like everywhere he's been, like, effectively has been a success. And to go,
and that's why he lasted so long at Aberdeen. That's
exactly.
Exactly.
Look at what you could have won.
Huh.
But I think there was a point even before Cormac had come in when he just couldn't build another side. But the problem from that point was it was a really attractive job, really well paid, lots of prospects, European football, good squad, and we gave it to Stephen Glass, who had no experience. That didn't work out. When it didn't work out, we went for the flavour of the month in Jim Goodwin, who had no experience of managing a club the size of us, kept going on about the amazing facilities and the fact that he didn't have to do it all himself and things like, like he'd been given the keys to his dad's car or something. And the reasons for Robson made it impossible not to give him the job. But again, no experience. I would like somebody who has
a statesman.
Managed.
Yeah,
I just want a manager, just an actual football, like somebody. I'd like to feel like whoever comes in has a CV. Like there are people that I'm like, oh my God, I really don't want. But at least if somebody has come in, it can come in and go, you know what, I managed in the Premier League, or I've dealt with egos, or I've been able to learn with the times to play several different systems, and footballers don't. There's enough credit in the bank that shows that footballers don't hate me. Okay, cool, right? That's a good start. Like that is a good start. There is a standout name, and I feel this is now an annual thing for me where I'm like, Alex Neil.
Yeah.
Alex Neil.
We're on the same page.
Alex Neil, like, I mean, he has had relative success almost in most of his jobs. Most of his jobs he's had. I think he had like his fourth or fifth job in England and lost that. He's not necessarily going to find it easy to get another job in the Championship quite as quickly, which means there's the chance to repair his reputation.
Timing.
But he's 42 or something. Like, he's terrifyingly young. He's taken, like, I mean, the point where he left Hamilton, like, his Hamilton team were really well organised, played all right football, good youth team.
They had them at top of the fucking league when he left.
Yeah. And then from there's a graph of like the point he left and they tank, and the point that he goes to Norwich and they like soar. So it's a no-brainer for me. But
you're really preaching to the converted here. I mean, I done an entire podcast with Fowler talking about Alex Neil and how all three of our clubs should just be figuring out how to get that done.
How do you get it?
And you've got the time in now, Aberdeen. If you don't do it, I said this. I think he is the archetype Scottish football manager for this top flight, where he knows how to bring unity together. He's a hard ass enough, but he's modern enough to work with egos without pissing everyone off. He plays decent football without being inflexible, and he can deal with the media. And he's a hard ass enough, which I think there needs to be an element of in our football. It's part of our culture, and it's just. Scottish players will relate to it more, I think, but without being sort of like over the top and Jim McLean and punching everyone. You know what I mean? There's a level. There's a line. And I think that he treads that perfectly, and he'll have good contacts in places now, and he's shown that he knows he can get success out of a team. I think we'd be lucky to have him. The biggest worry about a guy like Alex Neil for all of our clubs is that he's only there for 18 months. But right now, I just think. With the riches on offer,
that would be 9 months more than the last 3 managers.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I mean, I pray to God that doesn't happen, and I just want Alex Neil sitting ready for whenever Hibs have a manager, because I couldn't be more of an Alex Neil fan, to be honest.
Yeah, huge fan.
Yeah, but Tom, thank you so much for jumping on and talking us through that decision. Hopefully it continues to go shit for Aberdeen, I'll be honest. But thanks again, and thanks everyone for listening. Please subscribe to the YouTube. You watch this, please. We're trying to build an audience in this space. I think that's how people talk.
Yeah, this like video and stuff.
Yeah, I don't. It's really, I'm
all to see our pretty faces.
Yeah. The closest I get to this sort of language is Stephen Bartlett on Dragon's Den, and it fucking pisses me off. But, so this is the world that I'm trying. But please subscribe, chat, Patreon's there, Terrace is there. Yeah. It's all there. But Thom, thanks very much. Have a great evening.